The woman on the phone did not ask if I was sitting down. She just said my wife was with her husband, and somehow that sounded worse than any scream could have. It was 11:16 on a Thursday night in our kitchen outside Denver, and I was rinsing a wine glass Lauren had left in the sink before telling me she had to stop by the office for a late client call. The house was quiet in that expensive suburban way, all stainless steel, soft cabinet lights, and framed vacation photos trying too hard to prove a life was happy. My name is Daniel Carter, 41 years old, systems engineer, the kind of man who trusted schedules, receipts, passwords, and people who said they loved him. I had spent 12 years believing my marriage was not perfect, but solid. Solid like the cedar fence I repaired every spring. Solid like the mortgage payment that cleared on the 1st. Solid like the Sunday mornings when Lauren used to sit barefoot at the kitchen island, drinking coffee from a chipped blue mug and asking me what we should do with the rest of our lives. Then my phone vibrated beside the sink, and a number I did not recognize lit up the screen. I almost ignored it. Men my age ignore unknown numbers because they are usually warranties, surveys, or somebody pretending your student loans still matter. But something made me dry my hand on a dish towel and answer. The woman's voice was calm, too calm, the way people sound when they have already cried somewhere private and are now operating on clean facts. "Daniel Carter?" she asked. I said yes. She took one breath. "My name is Rachel Monroe. I am sorry to call this late, but I think your wife is with my husband right now." The wine glass slipped slightly in my hand, but did not fall. That is the part one remember most. Not my heart, not my breath, not the words themselves. Just the glass shifting against my fingers, catching the kitchen light, almost breaking, but not quite. I looked toward the hallway, toward our wedding photo on the wall, toward Lauren's beige coat hanging over the back of a chair like evidence that had not learned its own meaning yet. "Who is your husband?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. Rachel did not rush. "Evan Monroe," she said, "regional director at Halston Media." The name moved through the kitchen like cold air. Evan, the colleague Lauren mentioned too often, then stopped mentioning altogether. The man from the weekend strategy sessions, the delayed flights, the client dinners that turned into midnight apologies. I stared at the dark window above the sink and saw my own face reflected back, older than it had looked that morning. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. Rachel was quiet for a second. "Because I waited for my husband to tell the truth," she said. "He did not. And I have a feeling your wife will not either." Outside, a car passed slowly down our street, headlights sliding across the ceiling like a searchlight. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, one hand wet, one hand gripping the phone, and felt my life divide into before and after without making a sound. The next morning, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in a plain white mug, the phone beside him silent now, but the echo of Rachel's words still resonating in his mind. The sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting stripes across the hardwood floors, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to notice the quiet house around him, the little imperfections, the crumbs left from breakfast he had not eaten. Lauren had left early for a team meeting, she had said, her voice smooth, composed, but Daniel already knew the half-truth behind that polished explanation. He reviewed his calendar and the email chain Rachel had sent, a detailed account of days, nights, transactions, and appointments that Lauren had carefully hidden. Every entry revealed a small lie, a diversion, a rehearsal for the version of life she wanted him to see. Daniel held the mug in both hands, feeling the warmth, letting the tension in his shoulders ease slightly, though his mind raced through the facts he now had. Each sip was methodical, a small reminder that patience was a tool he had always valued. He remembered the first dinner he had prepared for Lauren, how she had smiled in that soft, careless way, unaware of how meticulously he planned the future they were building together. Now, years later, that same meticulous planning was what allowed him to see the edges of her deception. He opened his laptop and began cross-referencing schedules, receipts, and location data. The streets of Denver stretched beyond the window, cars moving with quiet purpose, people on their way to offices, schools, cafes, completely unaware of the undercurrents in one home. Daniel did not rush. He did not call Lauren to confront her immediately. He did not send a message to Rachel, though the urge was there. He had learned that confrontation without preparation is noise. Evidence without patience is wasted. The sun rose higher, glinting off the refrigerator, off the silver faucet, the picture frames he had dusted the night before. Daniel looked at the wall clock, noted the exact minute, and then stood, walking slowly to the living room, taking in the details of a home that had felt like comfort but now carried the weight of suspicion. Each chair, each cushion, each object seemed suddenly significant, potential witness to a carefully concealed truth. He paused at Lauren's side of the bed, where her tablet had been left charging, and considered the hours of data it contained, the history of meetings, messages, and movements that might explain her absences and the secrets she thought invisible. He sat back down at the table, hands wrapped around his mug again, inhaling the rich aroma, and made a plan. No rash confrontation, no public display, only methodical collection, verification, and understanding. He would know the full story before he allowed any words to cross between them. For Daniel, the house was not just a home this morning. It was the starting point for uncovering what had been hidden in plain sight, and the first hour of daylight was his alone to measure, observe, and prepare. Lauren came home that evening at 12:08, 32 minutes later than the latest version of her story allowed. I was sitting in the living room with one lamp on, a book open in my lap, though I had not read a single sentence in nearly an hour. The house had settled into its nighttime noises, the refrigerator humming, the furnace clicking on, the faint ticking of the clock above the hallway table. Every sound felt sharper when you were waiting for someone to lie to you. Her headlights swept across the front window, then vanished. A car door closed. Her keys touched the lock with the same familiar scrape I had heard for 12 years. But that night, even that sound seemed careful, rehearsed. When she stepped inside, Lauren looked exactly the way a guilty person hopes innocence looks. Beige coat folded over one arm, black heels in one hand, hair still neat, makeup soft but not tired enough for a woman who claimed she had spent 5 straight hours in a conference room. She smiled when she saw me, and the smile arrived a half-second late. "You are still up," she said. I marked the sentence in my head. Not, "I am sorry I am late." Not, "How was your night?" Just an observation designed to measure danger. I closed the book and set it on the coffee table. "Could not sleep," I said. My voice surprised me. Calm, even, almost ordinary. She walked to the kitchen and placed her purse on the counter, not by the chair where she usually dropped it. New habit, I thought. Or old habit finally noticed. "The client call turned into a mess," she said, opening the refrigerator without looking inside. "Evan wanted the team to rework the media plan before tomorrow morning." There it was. The name, offered too easily this time, as if putting it in the open made it harmless. I watched her pour water into a glass. Her hand did not shake. That hurt more than shaking would have. "Long night," I said. She nodded and took a sip. "You have no idea." I wanted to ask where she had really been. I wanted to say Rachel Monroe had called. I wanted to watch the room change around us when the truth entered it. But Rachel's voice came back to me from the night before. I waited for my husband to tell the truth. He did not. So I did the hardest thing a husband can do when his life begins to collapse. I let the silence work. Lauren leaned against the counter and studied me. "Are you upset?" she asked. That was the old door. The one she knew I would open with reassurance. "No, I am fine." "No, just tired." "No, I trust you." Marriage teaches people your soft spots, and sometimes they use them like keys. I folded my hands together and looked at the woman I had loved since we were young enough to believe love alone could keep a house warm. "Should I be?" I asked. She paused. "Not long. Not enough for a stranger to notice." But I noticed. Systems engineers notice delays. We notice when a process takes 2 seconds longer than it should. Lauren recovered with a small laugh, quiet and polished. "Only if you hate my job." Then she walked over and kissed my cheek. A simple kiss. Safe, practiced, almost formal. Her perfume followed her down the hall after she said she needed a shower. It was familiar at first, the one from the bottle on her dresser, but underneath it was something else, faint and expensive, like a hotel lobby after midnight. I sat still until the bathroom door closed. Then I stood, walked to the kitchen, and looked at the glass she had left beside the sink. A crescent of lipstick marked the rim. 12 years of marriage had taught me the shape of her mouth on glass, the exact shade she wore to client dinners, the tiny things a man knows without realizing he knows them. This shade was darker. I took a photo, not because lipstick proves anything, but because truth is rarely one thunderclap. Most of the time, It is a series of small sounds you ignored until they become a storm. The next morning, I woke before the alarm and lay still beside the empty space Lauren had already left behind. The pillow on her side was cool, the bathroom light was off, and the house had that hollow, early morning quiet that makes every thought sound louder than it should. On the kitchen counter, she had left a note beside the coffee maker. Early strategy meeting. Do not wait up tonight. Love you. The words were neat, familiar, and suddenly useless. I stared at the last two words longer than the rest, not because I believed them, but because I remembered when they used to mean something without needing proof. I made coffee, black and too strong, then sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and Rachel Monroe's email glowing on the screen. She had not written like a woman hunting drama. She wrote like someone building a case against her own denial. Hotel dates, restaurant receipts, a photo of Evan's dark gray Lexus parked outside a boutique hotel near Cherry Creek. Another photo of Lauren's silver SUV 2 rows over, half hidden behind a landscaping truck. Nothing loud, nothing theatrical, just facts, lined up patiently, the way cracks line up before a wall gives way. At 8:42, another message arrived from Rachel with no greeting. I found more. I am sorry. Attached was a shared calendar screenshot. The label said client review, but Rachel had circled the location. Same hotel. Same date Lauren claimed she was in Boulder. I leaned back and let the chair creak beneath me. Systems fail in patterns. One error can be chance. Two can be pressure. Three is design. I opened our joint credit card statement, then Lauren's travel reimbursement folder from the family computer, the one she had stopped using once her phone became her locked little country. Line by line, the ordinary became strange. Gas in Aurora when she said she was downtown. Valet parking near a hotel she never mentioned. A dinner for two listed as client entertainment, even though her company card should have covered it. I did not feel smart discovering it. I felt late. That is the cruelest part of betrayal. Once you see it, you do not just question the lie in front of you. You question the version of yourself who missed it for so long. At 9:30, I typed Rachel a reply. I need to understand everything before I confront her. She answered in less than a minute. So do I. Then another message appeared. Can you meet today? I looked around the kitchen, at the wedding photo on the hallway wall, at the beige coat no longer hanging from the chair, at the blue mug Lauren had not used in months. The house felt staged now, not lived in. A set built around a marriage that had quietly left before either of us packed a bag. I wrote back, noon. Somewhere public. Rachel chose a diner off Interstate 25, the kind of place with red vinyl booths, bottomless coffee, and enough background noise to make hard truths feel less exposed. Before I left, I walked upstairs to change, then stopped at our bedroom doorway. Lauren's closet was open 3 inches. Inside, her suitcase was missing from the top shelf. Not the big one for vacations. The small carry-on. The one she used when she did not want a trip to look like a trip. I stood there with my hand on the doorframe, breathing slowly, and understood something I had not been ready to name. Lauren was not just hiding where she had been. She was preparing for where she was going. By noon, I was sitting in the red vinyl booth at the diner off Interstate 25, Rachel Monroe across from me, a half-empty coffee cup between us, and the soft hum of conversation around us made the truth feel less sharp. Rachel did not rush into exposition, nor did she lean in as if I would faint at any detail. She placed a small envelope on the table and said, "Everything is here. Take your time." I opened it carefully. Hotel receipts, 2 sets of dinner invoices, a map with marked parking lots, a folded note she had written to herself with shorthand only she could read. Each piece lined up like puzzle pieces Daniel had spent years refusing to see. I felt my stomach tighten as I read, the room around me blurring. Rachel watched quietly, not as a teacher, but as someone who had carried the knowledge long enough to know patience mattered more than speed. Outside, cars moved slowly past the diner, a truck backing into a bay across the street, a cyclist weaving through traffic, ordinary life pressing forward while mine tilted on its axis. I traced the map in the envelope, noting the exact locations Lauren had claimed to be, the dates, and the discrepancies, the way the receipts contradicted her calendar. One after another, each detail confirmed the suspicion I had tried to deny. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. Rachel's voice came softly, almost like a whisper above the diner noise. "I did not want to call you. I thought he would tell the truth. He did not. You deserve to know before it's too late. Her hands rested on the table, flat, palms down, as if holding the evidence in place for me to examine without judgment. I nodded once, not trusting myself to speak. This was more than a confrontation. It was clarity. The waitress refilled our coffee cups silently, and I realized that each ordinary gesture around me contrasted with the storm I was processing internally. I picked up the receipts and sorted them by date, comparing them with Lauren's claimed meetings and work trips. Every overlap, every inconsistency became a thread, weaving together a picture of deception so precise that it could only have been deliberate. Rachel slid her tablet across the table next, messages copied from Lauren and Evan, conversations that had passed through encrypted channels, all pointing to the same conclusion. Lauren had been hiding Evan from me, and Evan had been hiding Lauren from her wife. I did not feel rage. I felt a cold, measured acknowledgement that my life had been manipulated layer by layer. Rachel spoke again, quieter now. Do you want to confront her, or wait? I stared at the envelope, at the tablet, at the bustling diner outside, and understood that the real confrontation would not be loud or public. It would be deliberate, precise, and require every bit of patience I had cultivated over a dozen years. I took another sip of coffee, let it burn down my throat, and whispered, "We plan. We wait. We act only when everything is ready." Rachel nodded, her expression steady, almost relieved. The storm had arrived quietly, in envelopes, receipts, and small confirmations, and for the first time, I felt ready to face the truth that Lauren had hidden so meticulously. By mid-afternoon, I left the diner carrying the envelope and tablet carefully tucked under my arm, walking through the soft sunlight on the Denver streets while trying to process what I had just seen. Each step felt measured, deliberate, the way a man learns to walk after discovering a foundation he trusted as cracks. Cars passed by slowly, their tires humming on asphalt, people walking dogs, carrying groceries, living ordinary lives while my own life had shifted into an unexpected pattern of vigilance and planning. I entered my car and did not start the engine immediately, letting my fingers drum on the steering wheel, considering the strategy, the evidence, the timing of every step I would take. Lauren had no idea I had the receipts, the hotel maps, the messages that traced her movements and decisions with precision. I thought about her coming home later, expecting the familiar calm, the same ordinary Saturday routines, while I now held a different understanding of her choices and intentions. Pulling onto the main street, I thought about Evan Monroe, the architect of the deception, carefully hidden in plain sight, confident that appearances had protected him. I traced his last known movements in my head, lining them up with the hotel addresses Rachel had provided, seeing the overlap between his schedule and Lauren's claimed work obligations. Every detail was a thread leading to a clear pattern, a narrative hidden beneath politeness and habit. I stopped at a small park, engine off, and looked at children playing in the distance, their laughter light and unknowing, a reminder of what ordinary life could feel like when the complexity of adult duplicity had not yet touched you. I breathed slowly, considering Rachel's role, the courage it must have taken to reach out, to gather facts, and to contact me knowing it could disrupt her own life as well. Every step I took from the diner to the park, every calculation I made about timing, evidence, and approach, reinforced the calm I needed to maintain when confronting Lauren. I did not feel anger yet. I did not feel triumph. I felt clarity and a kind of cold determination, understanding that careful observation, patience, and strategy were the only tools I had to ensure the truth revealed itself without chaos. When I finally started the car again and drove back toward the suburbs, I imagined Lauren walking through the front door, unaware that the day she thought ordinary had been quietly transformed by facts, proof, and the invisible hand of deliberate discovery. Every intersection I passed, every red light, every pedestrian crossing the street, reminded me that life continued around us, indifferent to our secrets, while I prepared to bring those secrets into light on my own terms, methodically, without noise, without confrontation, only certainty and measured timing. That evening, I returned home before Lauren and placed the envelope in the top drawer of my desk, not hidden in panic, just put away with the kind of care you give to something dangerous because it is true. The house looked unchanged. The kitchen lights still glowed warm over the island. The framed photo from our trip to Santa Fe still leaned slightly crooked on the hallway shelf. Her blue mug still sat untouched in the cabinet, pushed behind newer cups like an old version of us nobody wanted to throw away. I changed into jeans and a navy sweater, then started dinner because normal routines can be useful when your mind is carrying abnormal weight. Chicken in the skillet, rice on the stove, a salad I barely tasted while chopping. Every motion kept my hands busy. Every sound filled the space where questions wanted to live. Lauren came in at 7:42, smiling with that same polished exhaustion she had worn the night before. "Something smells good," she said, setting her purse on the counter, closer to her body than usual. I noticed that too. Once trust cracks, even distance becomes information. "Figured we should eat at home," I said. She looked relieved, which told me she had expected something harder. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table while the porch light threw a pale square onto the front walk. She talked about a campaign deadline, a difficult client, a presentation Evan had apparently saved at the last minute. She said his name lightly, carefully, using just enough admiration to make it sound professional and just enough frustration to make it sound safe. I nodded in the right places. I passed the salt. I asked whether she wanted more rice. The performance of marriage is quietest when both people know their lines, but only one person knows the script has changed. Halfway through dinner, her phone lit up beside her plate. She turned it over too quickly. Not fast enough for panic. Fast enough for habit. "Everything okay?" I asked. She smiled without looking up. "Just work." Work. That word had become a locked room in our house. I watched her fingers rest on the phone as if holding a door closed. "You have been working a lot lately," I said. She gave the same small laugh she used when a question came too close. "That is what happens when you want to move up." I looked at the woman across from me. The woman who once cried when our first apartment flooded because she thought we could not afford the repair. The woman who used to leave sticky notes in my lunch bag. The woman now measuring every sentence before handing it to me. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "To move up?" She paused with her fork above the plate. There it was again. The delay. The tiny gap where truth could have entered and chose not to. "Of course," she said. "Do you not want me to succeed?" A year ago, that question would have made me apologize for making her feel unsupported. That night, I heard the trap inside it. "I want you to succeed without disappearing," I said. For a moment, her face softened, and I almost saw the person I married. Then her phone buzzed again, and the softness vanished behind a practiced blink. "I should take this," she said, standing. "It is Evan." She walked toward the hallway before I could answer, lowering her voice as she moved. I stayed at the table, staring at the two plates between us, one half finished, one barely touched. Through the wall, I could not hear words, only tone. Calm. Low. Familiar in a way it should not have been. I did not follow her. I did not press my ear to the door. I opened my laptop, pulled up the evidence file, and added one more note with the time, the date, and the sentence that told me more than she knew. She did not ask permission to leave the table. She asked my silence to keep protecting her. Lauren came back to the table 8 minutes later, and 8 minutes is a long time when a man has begun measuring the distance between every word. Her plate had gone cool. The rice had hardened at the edges. The porch light still glowed through the front window, steady and innocent, while she sat down as if the room had not changed. "Sorry," she said, reaching for her water. "Crisis." I looked at her hand around the glass, at the wedding ring catching the kitchen light, at the way her thumb rubbed the band once before stopping. "Evan again?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes moved away from mine. "He is under a lot of pressure right now." The sentence landed softly, but it opened something ugly in me. Not because she defended him, because she sounded tired for him, concerned for him, the kind of concern I had been surviving on scraps of for months. I took my napkin from my lap and placed it beside my plate. "What kind of pressure?" Her mouth tightened, just a little. "Work pressure, Daniel. I do not know why you are asking like that." There it was. The turn. A simple question made suspicious by the person carrying the secret. I let the silence sit long enough for the refrigerator to hum between us. "Because you left dinner to take his call," I said. "Because you came home after midnight last night. Because you left this morning before sunrise. Because your suitcase is not on the closet shelf." The last sentence changed her face. Not completely. Lauren had control, and control was one of the things that had made her dangerous to my peace. But for 1 second, the practiced version of her stepped aside, and the frightened version looked out. "I have a conference next week," she said. I was packing early. I nodded slowly, as if the answer were reasonable enough to hold, even though both of us heard it cracking. "In Aspen?" Her eyes sharpened. "What?" I had not planned to say the city yet. It slipped out clean and quiet, and once it did, there was no taking it back. Rachel had shown me the booking. 2 rooms at a resort outside Aspen, listed under separate corporate accounts, same arrival date, same upgraded parking request. Lauren's hand lowered from the water glass. "Why would you say Aspen?" I stood, gathered both plates, and carried them to the sink. The ordinary motion steadied me. The clink of ceramic against stainless steel sounded louder than it should have. "Because I am trying to understand the truth without turning this house into a courtroom." She followed me with her eyes. "You are scaring me." That almost made me laugh, but there was no humor in the room. I turned around and leaned back against the counter. "No, Lauren, I am not scaring you. The truth is getting close, and you are confusing the two." Her face went pale enough that the kitchen lights seemed too bright on her skin. "Have you been checking up on me?" she asked. I thought about the receipts, the photos, the hotel map, Rachel's careful voice, the envelope in my desk upstairs. "Someone called me," I said. 2 words. That was all it took. The house seemed to inhale. Lauren did not ask who. That told me everything. She looked toward the hallway, toward her purse, toward the phone she had turned face down on the table like it might betray her if left alone too long. "Daniel," she whispered, and my name sounded like a plea and a warning at the same time. I shook my head once. Not angry, not loud, just finished with the version of the night where she decided how much reality I was allowed to see. "Do not explain yet," I said. "Not until you decide whether you want to tell me the truth or just the next story you think I can survive." The following afternoon, I left the house with the envelope carefully tucked in my messenger bag, driving slowly through the quiet streets of Denver, the sun casting long shadows across sidewalks and parked cars, each passing pedestrian and cyclist unaware of the quiet storm in my life. I arrived at the diner, red vinyl booths catching the late afternoon light, Rachel Monroe already seated, a cup of coffee steaming gently in front of her, her eyes calm but determined, a woman who had carried knowledge far too long to act impulsively. We did not speak immediately. I placed the envelope and tablet on the table, opened it methodically, separating receipts, hotel documents, and timestamps, each detail lining up with meticulous precision, every inconsistency a quiet accusation. Rachel watched, hands folded, occasionally brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her expression neutral but firm, offering no commentary until the evidence demanded explanation. I studied her carefully, noting her posture, the way she exhaled slowly between my glances, the subtle tightening of her lips as she anticipated my questions. The diner was filled with the ordinary background noise of clinking dishes, distant laughter, and the hum of conversation, a contrast to the gravity of the moment. We began to go through the documents line by line, Rachel pointing out discrepancies in dates, hotel check-ins, and credit card activity, her calm voice delivering facts without judgment, leaving me to absorb the implications. Each revelation shifted the landscape of my understanding, rearranging the patterns of trust and betrayal I had taken for granted. I checked my phone discreetly, confirming the locations, the times, and the consistency of Rachel's findings with my own recollections of Lauren's movements. Outside the window, sunlight fell on the asphalt, glinting off passing cars, making each reflection seem like a fragment of truth I had been blind to. Rachel placed a folded note on the table, the handwriting precise, detailing messages between Lauren and Evan, the narrative unfolding piece by piece. I felt a mix of calm and tension, knowing that confrontation would be inevitable, but understanding that timing and preparation were essential. Rachel's presence was steady, a silent anchor as I mapped out the next steps, realizing that each careful observation, each verified document, was a step closer to clarity. The day outside proceeded, indifferent to our discovery, yet inside the diner, the quiet assembly of evidence transformed the ordinary afternoon into a pivotal turning point, a precise and deliberate move toward uncovering the truth, forcing Lauren's secrets into the light without drama, without spectacle, and with a controlled patience that defined every decision I would make from that moment forward. By late afternoon, I returned home carrying the evidence Rachel had provided, the envelope and tablet carefully tucked into my bag, each step deliberate, each breath measured, as if I were pacing for a chess move, not a confrontation. The house greeted me with ordinary sounds: the low hum of the furnace, the faint tick of the clock, the refrigerator door closing behind a late snack someone had forgotten. Lauren's coat was folded neatly on the chair, the living room untouched, the way it always looked when she expected the world to believe everything was normal. I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter and started organizing the documents, grouping receipts, timestamps, hotel addresses, and messages, creating a pattern from chaos, arranging evidence like a silent argument with reality itself. The light from the windows fell across the kitchen table, catching the silver rim of a coffee cup, the edge of a notepad, each glint sharp and precise, reflecting the attention to detail that would guide my next steps. I did not call Lauren. I did not demand answers. I did not yell. Every instinct told me that patience and preparation were more powerful than any sudden confrontation. Minutes passed. Cars rolled by outside, the occasional pedestrian walking a dog, people unaware of the storm building behind these walls. I reviewed each message Rachel had highlighted, each photo of Lauren and Evan's supposed work trips, each line of the hotel receipts that contradicted the life she had presented to me. Each piece reinforced the reality I had been too polite to see. Lauren had been hiding her activities, and Evan had carefully crafted a story that included both of us, yet no one had asked for permission. I took another sip of coffee, noting the warmth, the smell, the ordinary sensation grounding me. Then I opened the family calendar, cross-checking the dates Rachel had circled with Lauren's claimed meetings. Discrepancies were no longer coincidences. They were decisions, deliberate omissions. I laid everything out across the table and studied it as a strategist would study terrain before a battle, though I did not feel the need for confrontation just yet. I walked past the window, observing the suburban street, the familiar neighbors walking dogs, jogging, returning from errands, life flowing naturally while my own reality was being rewritten piece by piece. Every time the front door clicked, I imagined Lauren returning, unaware of the analysis waiting for her, the truth that had been pieced together quietly, methodically, without spectacle. My hands moved over the envelope again, flattening the edges, ensuring no evidence was lost or mixed, as I mentally rehearsed the timing, the phrasing, and the sequence of steps I would take when the confrontation could not be delayed any longer. The house remained still, shadows lengthening across the walls, the ordinary and the extraordinary colliding quietly in the afternoon light, and I understood that when she arrived, the balance of control, clarity, and preparation would determine the rest of our story. By early evening, I had organized the evidence on the living room table, the envelope open, receipts, hotel confirmations, and printed messages forming a quiet map of Lauren's movements and her hidden conversations with Evan Monroe. I sat back in the leather chair, eyes scanning the ceiling as if it could provide insight into the next step. The room smelled faintly of the vanilla candle she had burned in the morning, though she had not been home long enough to light it herself. I let my mind replay every detail Rachel had shared, aligning it with my own observations, creating a mental timeline of deception that stretched across days, weeks, and months. Each discrepancy was a careful decision, and each decision was now visible to me, no longer buried under the routine of trust. I made a fresh cup of coffee, the mug warming my hands, and traced each hotel location on the map with a finger, imagining the logistics, the timing, and the coordination it must have taken. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting the suburban streets into a muted amber glow, long shadows sliding along sidewalks, highlighting the ordinariness of a world that had continued while mine had quietly fractured. I reviewed the messages Rachel had collected again, noting the patterns, the repetitions, and the subtleties of language that Lauren had assumed I would never detect. The more I read, the more I understood that confrontation needed planning, not emotion. Each decision about when to act, what to reveal, and how to maintain control became clearer with every document, every photo, every timestamp. I imagined Lauren returning from her errands, her confident stride across the foyer, unaware that I had aligned the pieces of her story, that the envelope now contained not just proof, but clarity and precision. I considered the meeting with Rachel at the diner and how our calm, methodical approach had prepared me for this moment, ensuring that emotion did not undermine strategy. I picked up the tablet and began drafting a sequence of actions, a timeline to ensure I could approach the situation with authority and accuracy, preserving dignity for all involved while still enforcing the boundaries that had been crossed. I looked toward the front window, the evening sky deepening to indigo, the streetlights flickering on, reflecting in the glass like stars in a private constellation. The world outside was ordinary, but inside, the order of reality had shifted irrevocably. I noted the slight tilt of the wedding photo on the wall, the empty mug, the soft hum of the refrigerator, and felt the weight of quiet anticipation pressing against me. Every motion, every plan, every measured breath was now part of the preparation. When Lauren finally walked through the door, I would be ready, not with anger, not with accusation, but with the methodical calm of someone who had seen the full picture, who had organized chaos into clarity, and who understood that the next steps would define the resolution of years of hidden truths. Lauren came home at 8:37, and by then the house had become too quiet to pretend it was peaceful. I heard her car door close in the driveway, then the soft roll of her suitcase wheels across the concrete. That sound reached me before her key did. Small wheels over a front walk, practical and ordinary, carrying the weight of a decision she had not yet admitted out loud. I was standing in the living room beside the coffee table, where the evidence lay in careful rows beneath the warm light of the floor lamp. Receipts, printed messages, hotel confirmations, a map with 4 locations marked in blue ink. Nothing dramatic, nothing thrown, nothing hidden, just the truth arranged neatly enough that it no longer needed my voice to defend it. Lauren stepped inside wearing her beige coat and carrying the small black suitcase she had claimed was for a conference next week. She stopped when she saw the table. For 1 second, the version of her who knew how to sell any story vanished completely. Her eyes moved from the receipts to the map, from the map to my face, then back to the suitcase handle in her hand. "Daniel," she said softly. It was not a greeting. It was the sound of a person realizing the room had been waiting for her. I nodded toward the chair across from me. "Sit down." She did, slowly, setting the suitcase upright beside her like a witness she regretted bringing. I did not begin with anger. Anger would have given her something to fight. I began with the first hotel receipt and slid it across the table. "March 10th. You told me you were in Boulder for a client review." Her lips parted, but I raised one hand, not sharply, just enough to stop the first reflex. "Do not answer yet." I placed the second paper beside it. "April 2nd. Cherry Creek. You said the team dinner ran late." Then the third. "May 17th. Same hotel group. Same parking record. Same name connected to the booking." Her face had gone pale, but she kept looking at the papers. That mattered. At least she did not pretend they were blank. I opened the tablet and turned it toward her. Rachel's compiled timeline filled the screen. "Rachel Monroe called me," I said. Lauren closed her eyes. Not in surprise. In recognition. That was the moment the last small part of me, still waiting for misunderstanding, went quiet. "How long?" I asked. She stared at her hands. It was not supposed to become this. People say that when they want the damage judged by the intention instead of the outcome. I had heard versions of it at work when systems failed because someone ignored a warning. It was never supposed to happen. But it did. "How long?" I asked again. "Since January," she whispered. "January." For months. For months of late meetings, careful kisses, adjusted calendars, and me standing in kitchens, hallways, and doorways believing exhaustion had stolen my wife when the truth was she had been giving her honesty to someone else. I leaned back, feeling the chair hold me up because something in me wanted to fold. And the suitcase? Her eyes filled, but she did not cry yet. Evan said he was leaving Rachel. There it was, clean and terrible. Not just an affair. A plan. A future built in secret while I was still paying bills, fixing fences, and asking what she wanted for dinner. I looked at the black suitcase beside her chair and understood that Rachel had not called too early. She had called just in time. "He told Rachel something different," I said. Lauren looked up then, confused, frightened, suddenly less like a woman caught leaving and more like someone realizing the road she had chosen might not lead where she had been promised. I turned the tablet back toward myself, closed the screen, and placed both hands flat on the table. Tonight, you are going to tell me the truth from the beginning. After that, you are going to call your lawyer, and I am going to call mine. Not because I hate you, Lauren, because I finally believe what the evidence has been trying to tell me. She covered her mouth, and the first tear slipped down her cheek without performance. Outside, the porch light glowed over the suitcase tracks on the front walk. Inside, our marriage stopped breathing quietly and finally said its own name. Lauren told the truth in pieces that night, not because she wanted to spare me, but because even confession has a habit of protecting the person speaking. It began in January, she said, after a regional planning meeting in Boulder, when Evan stayed behind to help her rebuild a presentation that had gone wrong. He listened. That was the word she used first. Not touched, not loved, not promised. Listened. I sat across from her at the coffee table, the receipts between us like small white stones marking a grave, and let her speak without rescuing her from the sound of her own choices. She said she felt invisible at work, then admired, then needed, then trapped by the attention she had mistaken for meaning. She said Evan told her Rachel did not understand him, that his marriage was finished in everything but paperwork, that he saw a future with Lauren once the timing was right. She believed him because believing him made her feel chosen. I asked when she stopped thinking of me as part of that future. She lowered her head and said she did not know. That answer hurt more than a lie would have, because it sounded true. Around midnight, she called a hotel and canceled the Aspen reservation while I sat beside the window and watched the porch light shine on the suitcase tracks outside. Then she called Evan. She put him on speaker because I asked her to, and Rachel was already on the other line with me, silent at first, breathing like someone standing at the edge of cold water. Evan answered with a softness meant for secrets. "Are you packed?" he asked. Lauren closed her eyes. Rachel made one sound, small and broken, but she did not interrupt. When Evan realized who was listening, the warmth left his voice so fast, it was like a door slamming in another room. He blamed pressure, timing, confusion, anything that could make a plan sound like an accident. Rachel asked him one question. "Were you ever going to tell me?" He did not answer. That was answer enough. By sunrise, the four of us were not a triangle or a scandal anymore. We were two marriages sitting in the wreckage of one man's promises and one woman's decisions, with no clean way back to the night before. Rachel filed first. I met with an attorney 2 days later. Lauren moved into a short-term apartment near her office and began the slow work of becoming someone who could say what she had done without polishing it. Evan resigned from Halston Media after Rachel's attorney sent documentation through proper channels. There was no public scene, no dramatic collapse, no shouting in a parking lot. Just paperwork, silence, consequences, and the dull ache of adults learning that private lies have public weight. Months passed. The house outside Denver became quieter than I expected. I kept the blue mug, but stopped leaving it where I could see it. I repaired the cedar fence in April, one board at a time, because some things are worth fixing and some things are only worth understanding before you let them go. Rachel and I spoke twice after the legal process started, both times brief, respectful, and heavy with the strange gratitude of people who met only because the truth needed witnesses. As for Lauren, she apologized often at first, then less often, then more honestly. The difference mattered. An apology that tries to end pain is not the same as one that agrees to sit beside it. A year later, I saw her at a mediation office downtown. She looked thinner, quieter, still beautiful in the way a familiar road can be beautiful even after it no longer leads home. She said, "I wish I had told you before I became someone I did not recognize." I believed her. I also signed the papers. Walking out into the Denver sunlight, I felt no victory, not the kind people imagine. I felt lighter and sadder and older in a way that did not feel entirely bad. The truth had not saved my marriage. It had saved me from living inside a version of it that no longer existed. And sometimes that is what freedom looks like. Not a grand escape, not a perfect ending, just a man standing in the open air, finally able to trust the ground beneath his own feet again.